In a modern operating theater, the threshold between consciousness and sedation is usually a calculated biological certainty. But when a patient with natural red hair lies on the table, their central nervous system actively resists the descent into sleep. An anesthesiologist must administer up to 20% more general anesthesia just to achieve unconsciousness. The anomalies continue well past sedation. A standard injection of a local anesthetic, like lidocaine, barely numbs their skin. If the ambient temperature of the room drops to 6 degrees Celsius, their body doesn't just feel a chill, it registers the temperature as a searing, acute pain. This diagram illustrates the systemic reach of the MC1R mutation. The branching pathways connect the midbrain's pain receptors directly to the immune system, explaining why a single genetic change impacts both anesthetic resistance and the body's inflammatory response simultaneously. Across the globe, this genetic expression is an extreme statistical outlier, appearing in barely 1 to 2. For our early ancestors evolving near the intense solar radiation of the equator, this shield absorbed incoming ultraviolet rays and dissipated them as heat, protecting the delicate cellular DNA underneath of dark pigment. Deprived of that signal, the broken melanocytes default to mass-producing a different, reddish-yellow substance called pheomelanin. Pheomelanin provides zero protection against the sun. When struck by ultraviolet light, it becomes highly reactive, actively contributing to the oxidative damage of the DNA and leaving the carrier exceptionally vulnerable to rapid aging and aggressive skin cancers. Natural selection dictates that extreme biological vulnerabilities are ruthlessly purged from the gene pool. For a mutation dismantling our solar defense to survive and thrive, a massive environmental pressure had to force it into necessity. Between 30 and 80,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans migrated out of Africa, pushing northward into the higher latitudes of Europe. They walked into an environment defined by dense cloud cover, brutal winters, and exceedingly weak, oblique sunlight. In this sun-starved climate, the selective pressures of the equator inverted. The heavy, dark eumelanin that kept early hominids alive under a harsh sun became a lethal evolutionary liability, physically blocking out the minimal ambient light. The human body strictly requires UVB radiation to endogenously synthesize vitamin D. A severe deficiency in this nutrient cripples the absorption of calcium, leading to soft, deformed bones in children, a disease known as rickets, and highly fatal skeletal complications for women during childbirth. The MC1R mutation turned the skin into an efficient evolutionary solar panel. In the absence of direct sunlight, this trait allowed northern populations to passively synthesize vitamin D, preventing the bone diseases that plagued darker-skinned settlers in the same environment. Nature utilized this precise genetic defect to save early European populations from the encroaching darkness of the Ice Age, securing the survival of what would become the isolated Atlantic genome. For decades, physical anthropologists operated under a seemingly logical hypothesis regarding the origins of pale skin and red hair in Europe. They assumed modern humans inherited the traits directly through interbreeding with Ice Age Neanderthals. Rigorous modern genomic screening dismantled that assumption. While ancient DNA from Neanderthal remains in Spain and Italy did reveal a point mutation for red hair, that specific genetic variant is entirely absent from modern human DNA. Neanderthals did not pass the gene down to us. This is a pristine example of convergent evolution. Two entirely distinct hominid species walked into the same freezing, low-light environment and independently evolved the exact same biological adaptation to survive. The biological timeline of the British Isles presents a similar historical illusion. Assumptions long posited that the very first hunter-gatherers and early farmers of Ireland possessed the quintessential Celtic appearance. But a landmark 2016 study of a Neolithic woman from Ballynahody corrected the record. Dating back over 5,000 years, her genome revealed a predominantly Near Eastern origin. Her genetic profile indicated she possessed black hair, olive skin, and brown eyes, closely resembling modern Southern European populations. The indigenous Neolithic populations did not carry the high-frequency red hair alleles. The iconic phenotype had to be imported later, carried across the continent through a massive and violent migration. The true introduction of the genetic architecture required for widespread red hair arrived during the early Bronze Age. A massive demographic upheaval brought the bell-beaker culture westward, carrying substantial genetic heritage from the nomadic, warlike Yamnaya herders. This map tracks the spread of steppe ancestry during the Bronze Age. We can see the dashed migration arrows moving westward across Europe, pushing straight into Britain and Ireland. This expansion effectively replaced the existing Neolithic farmers of the islands. The definitive proof of this genetic conquest was unearthed in a cyst burial on Rathlin Island, off the northern coast of Ireland. Archaeologists found the remains of 3 Bronze Age men, accompanied by this intricately decorated bowl food vessel. When their high-coverage genomes were sequenced, they showed a direct line of ancestry tracing back to the Pontic steppe. These men brought the foundational genetic admixture required for the MC1R variants to flourish. Once these steppe genetics hit the geographically isolated boundaries of Ireland and Scotland, the recessive trait was trapped. Within that island bottleneck, the mutation multiplied exponentially. While one branch pushed westward into the Atlantic, related populations migrated deep into the heart of Asia. In the hyper-arid sands of the Tarim Basin in China, archaeologists unearthed perfectly preserved mummies with distinct Caucasian facial structures and striking red hair, proving the recessive genes traveled along the future Silk Road. This mutation on chromosome 16 is a biological record of human endurance. It traces the paths of ancient migrations and the relentless environmental adaptations required to survive the edge of the world. Look closely at the red hair phenotype, and you are observing a biological anomaly. It's a systemic alteration extending deep into the immune system. When the MC1R receptor malfunctions, it drops its connection to interleukin-10, causing surrounding T cells to multiply into a hyperactive state. In Ice Age Europe, this biological overdrive actively kept early populations alive, allowing them to survive lethal bacterial infections. While ancient cultures could not see the microscopic interactions of T cells, they reacted intensely to the physical result, the vibrant, coppery hair that served as a visual proxy for this internal biological intensity. The earliest chapter of this mutation's history is defined by this physiological advantage, a tool for survival in a brutal, sun-starved environment. The Celts observed this intensity and translated it into their mythology, viewing the trait as a divine marker of supreme stas and untamable martial prowess. This reverence is perfectly embodied in the Ulster cycle of Irish mythology through the exploits of the legendary demigod warrior Cuchulainn. Ancient texts focus heavily on his physical transformation during the Riostrid, or battle frenzy. Scribes described his hair standing up like a crown of twisting red gold, resembling the tangle of a red thorn bush stuck in a gap. In the ancient Celtic world, carrying the genetic fire of red hair signaled that an individual was a living vessel of untouchable, divine violence. By the early modern period, the visibility of this trait became a lethal liability. In a climate of religious paranoia, the physical markers of this survival mechanism were reinterpreted as evidence of a demonic pact. During the peak of the European witch trials, inquisitors operated using a primary textbook, the Malleus Maleficarum, which provided the framework for identifying and punishing perceived heresy. Theologians using this text linked the phenotype directly to vampirism, dark magic, and demonic influence, leading to thousands of public executions across the continent. This demonization permeated Renaissance art. Painters uniformly depicted the betrayer Judas Iscariot with fiery red hair, branding carriers of the gene as inherently treacherous. During the Inquisition, possessing the MC1R mutation was a biological scarlet letter, a survival tool transformed into a literal mark of hellfire. Modern internet folklore frequently circulates a specific claim that exactly 45,000 red-headed women were executed in 15th century Germany alone. Historical records prove this statistic is a fabrication. Across all of Europe, spanning 3 full centuries, the total number of executions for witchcraft was between 40,000 and 60,000 people. Conflating these figures for dramatic effect distorts the genuine historical record of the witch trials. While the viral statistic is a modern myth, The theological bigotry and cultural terror inflicted upon Redheads was a tragic and real historical phenomenon. This mythology persists even today. In 2007, a massive viral news hoax claimed redheads were doomed to genetic extinction by the year 2060. Investigative reporting revealed the research was a public relations stunt funded entirely by a corporate hair dye manufacturer, not an independent academic study. This data visualization shows how inheritance actually works. Recessive genes do not die out or dilute over time. A recessive allele is patient. It waits, masked within a carrier population for dozens of generations, until two carriers reproduce and the physical trait is expressed. Unless every single carrier of the mutation on the planet perishes simultaneously, the biological extinction of red hair is a mathematical impossibility. The red hair phenotype is a biological record of human migration and adaptation. It is a physical mechanism engineered by human DNA to pull life-saving power out of the darkness of the Ice Age. It is connected to the continent-spanning migrations of Bronze Age warriors and the untouchable mythology of the ancient Celtic world. Our biology is an unbroken chain, woven across millennia of environmental pressure and shifting cultural perceptions. When you look at this mutation today, you are seeing the survival strategies of the Ice Age and the migrations of the Bronze Age. It is the history of our species, written in the color of a hair follicle, a genome that found a way to carry the fire.